to another episode of Pop Matters. I'm your host, Professor Lincoln Geraghty, and each month we'll be looking at popular culture matters and if they matter, from comics to sci-fi to all things fan-based. This month I have joining me Elena Nikiforova, University of Portsmouth graduate, and also works for the Portsmouth Guildhall, and Dr. Emma Austin, course leader for film studies. In this episode, we'll be discussing Portsmouth Comic Con, the Redux. Now, before we get to our main topic of conversation, we like to start with a roundup of the last few weeks in pop culture news. I want to start with the sad news that the Aussie soap Neighbours will be coming to an end this August. August 1st, I believe, is the last date. Now, the fan campaign to hashtag Save Neighbours ultimately failed to convince Channel 5 to reverse their decision to renew the contract. Whether you're a fan or not of such a long-running show or never watched the soap before, it's clearly quite a shocking sort of decision. And I'd like to ask the panel thoughts on a long-running show that clearly has a fan following coming to an end. How do you think this will fans will react to this decision?
I think it's devastating. We as fans, we grow just so close and so dedicated to our favorite shows and our favorite movies and our favorite texts in general. So I think seeing it abruptly come to an end, I think it is quite a devastating story.
Yeah.
And but the best thing that we can do is just move forward, look forward to other projects and continue to support the cast and crew of the previous show.
There's been a lot of stuff on social media, whether you've been following it or not, about, absolutely following where the actors are going, whether they'll be on other series, and clearly that's something fans are very interested in. Do you have other franchises that have gone through this cancellation, saving sort of campaigns?
To be honest, not cancellations in particular, but more so just it coming to its sort of natural end.
Yeah.
We have so many sagas like Harry Potter, all of it just coming to an end because there does come a time where we have to learn to say goodbye to our beloved characters and our beloved plot lines, because obviously they all have to grow and move forward to the next projects and the next sort of chapters in their life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a constant occurrence. It's inevitable.
It's a risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Loving things so much. Emma, what do you think about Nate? It's a sort of British icon, even though it's filmed down under, isn't it?
I think so, and I think that's kind of one of the interesting is the kind of the production and financing behind the programme, which is part of the reason for its cancellation, and that it's not sustainable really as a production anymore, which is is a shame to the fan base. But I do think this is a challenge that faces an awful lot of, if you like, traditional terrestrial production of TV shows.
Yeah.
And we've seen over the years that loads of soaps have actually come and gone. Some have had incredibly short shelf lives. There was one set in Spain, I believe, amongst a community.
Yeah. El Dorado, was that
El
it?
Dorado,
El Dorado,
yes,
yeah.
El Dorado. You may not. There's a reason.
Look it up on Google.
So this is something that happens, but I think for as you're quite right, with a lot of the fans and viewers of Neighbours, because it's been around for so long, I think there's that kind of sense of almost nostalgia for the different generations of Neighbours, which makes this all the more poignant.
Yeah, and nostalgia's key, isn't it? And that's important in many fandoms, and why fandoms sort of, move on and go on well after the sort of object is finished. Now, Elena, I know you're a sort of very, very diehard fan of Marvel and the MCU. And of course, we've just had Miss Marvel drop on Disney+, and we've got Thor coming to our cinema screens in July. So I was wondering, what do you make of the new superhero series, Miss Marvel, and what do you think Thor will give to us when it finally hits our screens?
Well, first of all, you've opened up Pandora's box because we need at least 4 hours for this. No, I'd like to think of myself that as big as a fan that I am of Marvel, I'm also as big of a critic as well. And I think the sort of area of representation has always been a little bit of a thorny subject for the MCU. But in the recent years, to be on a bit of a more positive note, there have been projects that have kind of restored my faith and hopes that Marvel is indeed headed in the right direction. And despite at a quite slow pace still. But Miss Marvel and Thor Love and Thunder are definitely two of those projects. We have Miss Marvel on one end, a revolutionary project for the MCU. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's the first time that we're seeing a young Muslim Pakistani American girl be the main protagonist of the story. She's coming face to face with all the struggles and responsibilities of what it means to become a superhero. But also it's the first time that we're seeing sort of a glimpse into the life and culture and traditions of a Muslim family, and I think that's just so beautifully blended with the superhero elements of the story, and I think just all of that put together makes Ms. Marvel one of the most prominent and important texts in the MCU in terms of representation and in terms of just where we hope that Marvel will go from here onwards. And then on the other hand, we've got Thor: Love and Thunder, which is out next Thursday, July 7th.
Countdown's begun.
Yeah, countdown has begun. In the UK, we get it a little bit earlier than America.
Sure.
So we're quite lucky in that department. I'm very hopeful for it. I didn't start off as Thor's biggest fan back in 2017 when Ragnarok came out. I didn't love it as much as everyone else seemed to love it. And I also wasn't the biggest fan of the director as well at the time. But now I've gone through a complete change of heart. I rewatched Ragnarok recently and I loved it much more than I did the first time 5 years ago. And I'm growing quite fond of Taika Waititi as well. He's
central to the MCU now, it seems, and of course Star Wars as well.
Yes, yeah. He's coming back again to direct Thor: Love and Thunder. I've been keeping up with a lot of his interviews and a lot of his other recent projects, and he's always been extremely vocal with how he underlines the importance of LGBT representation in a lot of the projects that he does, and he always goes the extra mile to include them as well. So I'll be very interested to see what he does with Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah. Emma, so, clearly MCU is now fully established, and Disney Plus, this is what, its fourth or fifth sort of Marvel series. What are your thoughts? Have you tuned in yet, or is it still on your watch list?
I'm saving them up.
Saving them up.
To do them
There's
all
plenty
in one
coming.
go.
Yeah.
Binge them.
I think I can't. I'd love to binge them, but then I can't remember where I started. My memory is that bad these days. I think we're entering that kind of really interesting stage of development for the MCU now that the basic principles have been established in terms of the TV series as part of, also separate to the film projects.
Yes.
So it's very interesting for me that perhaps Marvel now feel bolder, or perhaps that there is much more of that need to engage with fan and viewers' desires to see better representation on screen. So we have started to see this kind of representation of different ethnicity, diversity starting to come in. But I think Ms. Marvel is right. I think this is the watershed breakthrough moment. Yeah. So I think they're going to be following the success or not of it very, very closely. And fingers crossed, if it works, then we can look forward to even more diverse projects. Which really kind of broadens the scope of the universe.
And diversity is interesting. You raised there as a sort of, whether we see that sort of representation ultimately, be successful in terms of Disney strategizing about what audiences to reach. Similarly, the BBC seems to have gone more down that path and followed with a particular casting choice. We'll be talking about Comic Con in a minute, and it's interesting, during one of the days at Comic Con, the big news was revealed that the next Doctor, BBC revealed the next Doctor will be sex education star Ncuti Gatwa. What are your thoughts on this, and where do you see the Doctor Who sort of storyline going, and the impact of such a casting has?
I think my first thought is, why couldn't they announce it on the day we had the panel on Doctor Who?
This is it. We had a panel on the Saturday, and then on Sunday they revealed it.
Full of die-hard fans, and this announcement really, it really would have added to our conversations. But I think, in a very similar sense to Marvel testing the water, Doctor Who has done the same thing over the years. If we think back, this isn't our first Black Doctor. We had obviously the Fugitive Doctor played by Joe Martin. We've had slightly better representation of ethnicity and race, and also gender and sexuality, I think, over the last couple of decades, which I think really shows the strides toward better representation. I won't say it's perfect, there's still a long way to go. But I do think this shows how, for really kind of central television programmes, because I think Doctor Who is central really to British television history.
Fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah. Even for people who aren't fans, it is a touchstone, it is something that people recognise. Yeah. So to have this better sense of representation coming through, Jodie's part of that, of course, but now to take on a black male lead, I think is really a major stride forward. What it promises, I can't tell you, because they're being quite good at keeping some of the secrets this time round.
Very secret.
I think what is tending to overshadow this are the preparations for the anniversary.
Yeah, the 60th.
Specials, the 60th, yeah. So we're getting lots of leaked photos of David Tennant on set. I think lots of leaked images of Neil Patrick Harris.
Yes.
In his role. There's lots of teasers about potential companions, former companions, possibly even K9.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that would work.
Yeah, he's been back. Don't need
He
it.
did well in Sarah Jane Adventures. Let's just leave it at that. I mean, does he really need to be back in the limelight would be my question. But it does kind of promise what I think is really interesting, what Doctor Who does so well, is looking to the past but also thinking ahead to the future.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where the television landscape should be in terms of representation.
Absolutely. Elena, are you a fan of Doctor Who? Are you...
Unfortunately not.
No.
I don't have
Well, then why? Well, now is the chance to sort of...
No.
But clearly it's a significant casting, and it did make an impact at Comic Con when the news was released,
Definitely.
didn't it?
I'm aware of it, of course, as Emma said as well. It's such a prominent piece of British television, but also part of British culture as well. I think it's established itself as such a prominent part of overall British culture and British media. So I am aware of it, but unfortunately I don't keep up with it. I know Dave Tennant and Neil Patrick Harris. I've seen the pictures and everything, but
chance to start afresh when it comes out. The 60th anniversary, is that in next year, 2023? So we've still got a few months to wait on that, haven't we?
Sure. So I have about 1 year to.
You've got a year to
about how many seasons?
60 years of Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's fine. 60 years in 1 year.
As long as we don't include all the audio and books and everything, should be fine. Should be fine.
Great. Amazing.
Well, thanks for that. Absolutely. Plenty of important pop culture news, plenty of revision for Elena to get up with. Now, the last story, we're talking about Doctor Who and its impact at Comic Con, takes us nicely onto our main topic of conversation today. What happened at Portsmouth Comic Con? So since our last episode about Portsmouth Comic Con, the big event happened, a huge success which saw thousands of comic book fans of all descriptions descend on the Guildhall back in May. For those unable to attend, let's show a short highlights video that will give us a flavour of what took place.
Day to day, I'm recording voices for shows and games and movies all over the world for things like Scooby-Dooby-Doo! Like, man, it's really creepy, Scooby pal! So I worked with a really nice guy called George Lucas, who is the guy that created Star Wars. So when you watch Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, in the Senate scene, you'll see this guy. His name is Axe Mo. And I'm the voice of Axe Mo, so you hear me say, "The Congress of Malastare concur with the right honourable delegate of the Trade Federation. A commission must be appointed now."
I'm Mikan Sumiki from Danganronpa. I'm Mitsuri from Demon Slayer.
And why do you girls like coming to Comic Con?
It's just like a way to express ourselves here. We don't get like bullied here, so it's nice. It's fun to meet people who are into the same stuff as us.
Elena, I wanted to turn to you first, as you helped organise Comic Con, working with the Guildhall and participating in our panels. What was your role, and what stood out for you over the 2 days as some of the major events of the Comic Con?
So with the Guildhall, my role was marketing assistant. which meant that my main sort of priority was to, in a sense, take over the social media accounts for the Portsmouth Comic Con and help create and publish a lot of relevant content in the weeks leading up to the event. But also, it was another task of mine to sort of present like a live coverage, live correspondence of the event during the weekend that it took place, and you would have been able to see a lot of that on Instagram stories and Facebook stories and all of the apps. It was an incredible, obviously, like it was just such an incredible opportunity, and not only being part of the whole social media crew, but just taking part in the whole process of what it means and what it takes to put together such a large-scale event,
Yeah.
and seeing the behind-the-scenes of the whole process, of the whole venue coming to life, and working with the marketing team and the whole Guildhall team in general, and meeting so many of the amazing creators and partners and artists that were present at the event. It was just such an enriching experience that I'm just so grateful for, and I'm happy to say that it resulted in me continuing my work with the Guildhall,
That's excellent.
which I'm happy that I'm still doing to this day.
And help planning future events, of course.
Yes, exactly. We're already working on the 2023
Yeah.
Comic Con. We're back on the 6th and 7th of May 2023.
Is that the date confirmed?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, and I was also lucky enough to participate in 2 panels alongside you
Yeah.
and Dr. Van Norris as well from the University of Portsmouth. We had the female representation panel in the superhero comic books genre. We had Marguerite Sauvage and Nicholas Streeton alongside
That's right,
us, and
yeah.
Van as well. And we also had our annual MCU roundup, and it was amazing. It was just a professional dream come true, but also a fan's dream come true to just be involved in this event. And it left me extremely motivated and inspired to, because when I take part in such events alongside such talented, knowledgeable individuals, it always leaves me very inspired to go home and research more and study more and read more about my favorite texts and my favorite characters. So I'm very much looking forward to 2023.
Yeah, no, and we'll be there and covering it and taking part. Now,
Yes.
Emma has been, part of the event since we started participating. Last time on the show, you told us why comics and conventions are so popular and appealing. What did you see out of this year's Comic Con that suggests fandom is thriving? Or do you think perhaps there was something out of Comic Con that we weren't quite expecting?
Well, I have to be completely honest. I didn't see an awful lot of Comic Con because there were so many people.
There was a lot of people there.
Which in itself tells a great story. I
Yeah.
think, after several years of a pandemic, people were really keen to get out and to form those kind of social connections at the Comic Con, and obviously to display their costumes, but also display their knowledge. So I think that was, really a kind of really encouraging sign of how Comic Cons are important to people, and especially the Portsmouth one, which I think is one of the most popular in the country now. What I think we also started to gather from a lot of the dialogues from the artists, from the writers, from the fans at the Comic Con this year, and this was especially coming through in the panels that you attended and I attended as well, was this idea of the importance of representation. So we have artists and writers such as Janet Cayley, Andy Fanton from the Beano, all of whom, in various different areas of the comic book sector, are reporting on this growing need amongst audiences to see themselves depicted in comic books, and how influential and important this can be, particularly to younger generations, those at school, primary school and secondary school age. Janet Cayley reported that this is where we're seeing a rise in comic book publishing, is in the youthful graphic novel section of the industry. And again, it's coming back to this idea of generations, which is what I find really fascinating. A lot of fandom can be about nostalgia and what is comfortable and what takes us back to our younger days.
Absolutely.
What we're seeing now, I think, is a younger generation who are actually much more forward-thinking and are much more explicit about their desire for representation. And if it isn't there, they're actually creating it themselves.
Yeah.
So we're seeing, again, that really kind of strong rise of independent art and narratives, which are filling the gaps that maybe the bigger publishing houses have kind of left unexplored.
Yeah, there's gaps to fill, and fans often find those gaps in which to fill it. Now, as you were saying, there were thousands of people there across the weekend, and we've been participating since the first Comic Con back in 2019. Yeah.
19?
18,
18,
yeah, 18
yeah.
and 19,
Time
and then
flies.
now, yeah.
And the university has a huge presence with panels, speakers, and technology on display. In fact, one of our roving reporters appeared to have travelled some time and distance to get there. So let's take a little look at what the doctor found out.
I think I'm in the right place. Park out here for the day. Let's go. So what is it that brings you back to Comic Con? What do you like about it so much?
Well, seeing all the different people coming here, I mean, people from all different sectors of Comic Con, for example, a giant Wookiee from Star Wars.
It interrupts our interview. Come on, guys. No, hang on. We spoke about this earlier. Come on. Every time. Oh, hang on. Yeah, I got it right here. Okay. There you are. How's that? All sorted. Thank you. Yeah, all good. Thank you.
For the fine-looking young man, yes?
Yeah, I'd love some. Yeah, and some spices as well. Be lovely.
Spice is good, but you have to have the credits.
I haven't got the credits.
No credits.
And I can't hand this in. I need it. It might come in handy later.
Maybe a droid, yes? Droid?
Yes, that's more like it. It reminds me of my my own droids.
I haven't taught you to say affirmative, Doctor, yet.
Oh, it's brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, you're welcome.
Okay guys, so I'm here in the future VR room. I'm here with Pippa, who's come from the University of Portsmouth. Nice to meet you. So what's happening today behind us?
So you are here in the Future Zone, which is the University of Portsmouth and the Centre for Creative and Immersive XR. So you've got lots of virtual reality games going on. So we've got augmented reality Mario Kart going on over here, and one where you do some bricks and some building. And then we've got a number of student games. And all of this is manned by our students and by our team on the Enabling XR Enterprise project.
How do you personally see things of Comic Con and comics and film and industry and gaming? Do you think it's going this way?
Absolutely. I mean, this is so much fun. What's wonderful about this is inspiring kids, getting them to get hands-on with the tech and feeling that magic of a roller coaster, but they haven't actually left, the building. It's amazing. Now CCI XR is open. We're going to turn that dial right up to 11 and do a lot more fun.
So is this your first Comic Con?
It's the first one I've dressed up.
And how do you find it so far?
It's brilliant fun, yes.
It's going pretty well. It's my first one, so
First
I'm
one
having
ever?
quite fun. Yep, first one ever.
And who are we dressed as today?
Red Hood, also known as
Amazing,
Jason
absolutely
Todd.
amazing.
I just really like meeting other people who are dressed up, and it's quite fun.
You've been stopped for lots of photos, I
Yeah,
imagine,
I
of
have
things.
actually, yeah. People asking me to kind of scare them.
So one day we
and-
feel famous, don't we? It's like,
Yeah,
it makes us
it's
feel like
great.
celebrities.
And nobody knows who you are.
Exactly. It's that escapism, isn't it, that I think
Yeah.
I really enjoy.
It works tough. When you're dressed up, you can forget
Do
about
what
it.
you want, yeah.
You can just be someone completely different for the day. I've got a very, very grown-up job, so I can come here and pretend to be someone else.
Amazing.
And it's great.
So who have you cosplayed today? So what does Comic Con mean? Well, for me personally, I see Comic Con as a haven. You get to dress up like I am, you get to explore different types of medias, cultures, and it ranges from so many different things you can choose from. As we know, the real world can be really mad and crazy. All sorts of different shows, comics, books, anything really in the media related to this has been a haven for a lot of people, a safe space. You can look around and see everything that's being sold, from books to comics to artworks, and people are just enjoying getting photos of each other and having a good time. So Comic-Con really has that nice community feel. It's a celebration of pop culture, and it's a day that anyone can enjoy.
Great video there, and we're lucky enough today to have live joining us via the technology of Skype. Oliver Langton, a student here at the University of Portsmouth, put that together, and clearly a fan of Doctor Who, is that right?
Oh, very big fan of Doctor Who. Yeah, it was a great day. Absolutely loved it. We did the whole weekend. And it's like you were saying about the cosplaying, the dressing up and seeing everyone dressed up is so much fun and sort of that escapism for a lot of people as well. Because I remember talking to that Weeping Angel in the video. She was like, "Oh, I have such a stressful and heavy job. So the fact I get to dress up and like escape that and have a bit of fun is what I feel like it's all about at the end of the day."
Clearly, David Tennant is your favourite Doctor. Do we need to say any more
He's
than
a-
that?
He's actually not. Surprising. My favourite's Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor. But the reason why I'm 10 is because I look like him the most, or like the brown hair, spiky hair, and stuff. It's great because kids and their parents and things will stop me for photos who are also Doctor Who's or other things and from different fandoms, but they are aware of, like, say, David Tennant's Doctor. So when you talk about where the show is and where it's going, stuff now, everyone remembers that time with David Tennant as sort of quite recognisable. Say for like a lot older fans, that was like Tom Baker to them.
Yeah, and we've sort of talked a little bit about how important nostalgia is, and you clearly picked up on that in your conversations with fans about who their favourite Doctor was, and you know, and why they liked the show in the first place.
I mean, I get quite annoyed at fans and non-fans that say the show's very sort of all political, it has to move with the times and X, Y, and Z about it. But the show's always been like that. I mean, it's always been changing. It's a different actor every time, and it deals with topics in an interesting way since the 60s and 70s. And so learning about that and sharing those views with people, some quite extreme, some not, you still have the right to talk about it like that. And I suppose that applies to any fandom, really, because you're entitled to that view. Just, I feel like, don't be toxic with it. And I know we had a previous conversation on one of the episodes or when we were at Comic Con how toxic this fandom can be. And it's just a real shame that people take it to such extremes when so many people love it, and it's just hard to hear sometimes.
Yeah, and toxicity is not just unique to Doctor Who. Clearly, Elena, there's MCU, there's fans that disagree with everything, don't like things. Anything that stands out for you as particularly problematic in that?
I mean, to go back to Miss Marvel,
Yeah.
I think the low ratings that the show is getting in comparison to all the other Disney Plus shows is quite problematic in my perspective, because it's an extremely unique story, but also at the same time, it's not a story that we haven't seen before. It's a coming-of-age story about a young protagonist who's come face to face with all the struggles of becoming a superhero. And it's kind of very similar to the first Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Homecoming. And then it seems like people didn't have an issue that was the sort of central plot line with Spider-Man, but now they're having an issue with it being the central plot line for Miss Marvel. So without naming any names, I'm just wondering what could the reason be behind that, but we know what the reason is behind that. So yeah, there's quite a lot of hatred and quite a lot of negativity in these fandoms, but it's inevitable. It's inevitable because we all have different perspectives and we all have different point of views. Not correct, not always correct, but it's part of fandom.
Sure. And Ollie, like roving reporter around Comic Con, what stood out for you? Clearly, people were really interested in talking to you. They were open in talking about their love of the different shows. Any particular sort of interviews that stood out for you?
Yeah, I think, like's been said on the panel, MCU and Doctor Who were the big sort of winners over the weekend. I'm more of a Doctor Who fan, so I'll talk about that. But I think casting the new Doctor and who it is, I think it's genius casting by Russell T Davies, the returning showrunner. A load of friends of mine, or from my generation, know the actor from Sex Education, like you say. And so I've never seen Doctor Who, but they're like, oh, I'll watch it now because he's in it.
Yeah.
And not only is he someone that's trendy with young people, because he is a strong actor and he's very capable, for older fans, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised by the casting. And I think it's a real shame for someone like Jodie Whittaker and Jo Martin, the first female lead to play the role, didn't get the same reception. But I really do think it's not down to them. It is down to the production and marketing team for BBC Doctor Who, because it's like you said earlier on, it is a pillar in television. It's been going for 60 years, the longest sci-fi show and British show. And so for them to fail them, I hope that this Doctor doesn't get that, because they've been showing things from past episodes and being so secretive about 60th. There's not a lot of content for Who fans. They want something new and refreshing. They don't want to keep going back to the past, because as much as it's about time travel, we have to keep moving forward and with the times.
Yeah, there's real energy and positivity at the convention. Like you mentioned, it's a safe space. It's a place that fans can really revel. Before we let you go, Ollie, a couple of episodes that will give Elena a head start on the homework for 60 years of Doctor Who.
Oh, I'll give you a couple. So the first ever episode, An Unearthly Child. It's actually, for not even for a Doctor Who base, for like a script written British drama, it's brilliant. I would say Remembrance of Daleks, a Seventh Doctor story. It's one of my favourites, and I think a lot of fans' favourites.
Note this down.
Yeah.
And note it down. And a Fourth Doctor story, because I'm sure, although you're not a fan of the show, you know about the staff and the hat and the curly hair with this. It's like sort of tied to the show. There's a story called Robots of Death, and it's quite a fun one. And so I recommend those three.
Brilliant.
Loads more. But I haven't got time.
Of course, yeah.
There's loads more, absolutely. But yeah, Robots to Death is good, and it's like a murder mystery.
Oh, I love that
mixed
genre.
with technology and robots come to get us, as always the case.
Of course.
But thanks, Ollie. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next year at the con.
Yes, definitely. Thanks so much for having me, and thank you for letting me take the lead filming a day. It was so much fun, and it was a great day, so thank you.
Yeah. See you in cosplay next year. Thank you, Ollie.
See you then.
So, Elena, a fun look there at the convention through the lens of the famous time traveller. I was wondering about the role of role-playing and cosplay. How much did you see going on at the event at Comic Con, and why do you think that's an important part of what fans do at an event convention like Comic Con?
Well, we had the cosplay panel.
Cosplay panel.
Yeah, the whole main
competition.
Stage. Yes,
Yep.
yes. The whole main stage was just dominated by beautiful cosplayers of all ages, and I think the important part of it is that people feel happy and free to just be themselves, to dress up as their favorite characters, and to come out on stage and present themselves in the full color and the full blast that they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's why events like these are of such importance, is because they promote that. They want us exactly to feel proud, and to feel proud to be ourselves and to call ourselves fans.
Yeah, and conventions offer a sort of safe space for that, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
About being able to display who you are, your identity,
Yeah.
through costume, through performance.
And it's liberating,
Yeah.
because if in your personal life you don't get that sort of opportunity, then you can go to events like these and be who you want to be.
Yeah. And Emma, a front seat, and as you said, most of the panels you took part in or sat in, and so you probably had quite a good sense of what hot topics fans were talking about. Any ones that stood out for you? You already talked about representation being key, but any sort of fan debates that were sort of urgent?
I think the MCU took centre stage in the hugely popular MCU panel, which you've been a member of, I think, twice now?
3 times.
3 times.
Yes.
3 times for sure. So I think that's really dominated the conversation in terms of, if you like, the kind of the big banner events that people are looking forward to. In terms of kind of smaller, more personal conversations, what really, really always impresses me about the dialogues at Portsmouth Comic Con is how family orientated it is. It is very much about bringing together fans of different ages and, if you like, depths of fandom. There is a tendency within the media to think of fans as very, very extreme, very, very, very focused. But what we have, particularly within those 2 days, at the panels and in the displays, are people engaging with this and slowly bringing in the younger generation to also express their interests.
Yeah.
And I think that's what started to come through for me in the panels, especially talking about things like the Beano, and talking again about those young adult and young teen graphic novels. There is a sense here of the importance of the younger generation making their voices heard. So I have already mentioned that. The other thing that I think is really interesting is the kind of debates and representations that are kind of taking us back to particular decades. And I think at the moment, the kind of core debate that was beginning in those panels, and we're seeing much more explicitly now, is the return to the 1980s, which is really being embodied in Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Which is obviously kind of one of the big topics amongst popular culture fans at the moment. So, Elena, I don't know if you want to take over from me there and talk about Stranger Things.
Oh no, we don't have 4 hours.
And spoilers.
No spoilers yet. Well, the second half of season 4 is out this Friday. I can't wait. I'm going to be watching it from 8 a.m. when the episodes come out on Netflix.
Is that when it drops on the UK?
Yes, yeah,
Right.
8 a.m. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about that nostalgia. I think we keep coming back to it because it's such an important part of the whole event and the whole sort of occurrence of conventions and fandom and everything. But yeah, it's just about sort of going back in time and seeing what was lacking during those times and then sort of applying it in modern times, recreating it the way that we wish it was and we wanted it to be. But I also want to touch upon another point that you said about just the whole togetherness, like bringing the younger generations and older generations together in fandom. And I think it's important to just outline that that's what fandom is all about, community and togetherness. And events like the Portsmouth Comic Con make that their top priority, and it shows because it's just so acceptable and it's so liberating and so open and just everyone can have a platform there to
and
be
there's
themselves.
space to do what you want, whether it's to buy stuff, whether engage in the panels, whether to sort of meet celebrities and do the cosplay competition. It's an absolute sort of mixed bag, and every fan has the chance to sort of explore what they really want to do with no pressure.
Exactly.
You know. Well, thanks for that. Thank you. A little bit of homework, I think we have for you. All the Doctor
60
Who's,
years of
60 years of
Doctor
Doctor
Who,
Who, and we'll catch up with Stranger Things, ready for when it drops. 8 a.m. on Friday? Okay. That's all we have time for today. If you have any questions about what we've been talking about today, please put them in the comments on YouTube. But for now, my thanks to Elena Nikiforova and Dr. Emma Austin. We've been discussing Portsmouth Comic Con, the Redux, because pop matters.